Welcome to the PCA Craftsmanship Forum's Tools and Products series. Your host is Julie Ethan, the current Executive Director of the PCA Craftsmanship Forum. Her guest is John Stahl, the inventor of Dura-Fix, an epoxy wood filler product.
John, welcome to the Tools and Products meeting.
Thanks, it's my pleasure. Hope everybody's having a good summer so far.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed to find out about the incongruous backgrounds of painting contractors. And I have heard everything from those who do professional sailing, winemaking.
Winemaking, oh, that's interesting.
I know. There was a guy in Florida who actually would give his clients a bottle of his wine when he finished the paint job.
Oh, nice. Or a bottle of honey.
Yes, I know.
Right? Yeah.
I've heard of the honey makers. I know. I know my husband and I came to it from very different paths. Myself as a nurse and him as someone interested in sports and fitness. We end up starting a painting company. So,
okay, cool.
John, tell us about your journey from singing, dancing, and acting to the invention of this product.
Yes, a little bit of that I'll cover in the presentation, but yeah, I've got a fine arts degree. A lot of times I'm asked, do you have a chemical background? I don't. I moved to New York City. I got a degree from the University of Utah, and while I was working in the summer, I worked in an old house, helping a friend out, working on some things. And so when I moved to New York City, I started to audition and take classes and try to my hand at Broadway, and that didn't really happen like I planned.
I mean, seriously, Broadway means you must have been training like through all your childhood years for that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I started when I was about 15 or 16. Yep. As a matter of fact, just a little sidelight, I was telling somebody the other day, a friend of mine from high school, I said, yeah, I started taking ballet classes when I was in high school, but I never told anyone because they would have teased me mercilessly if otherwise.
Well, I agree. I mean, you and I are probably in the same age range, and I remember it wasn't very cool for boys to take dance classes.
No, so nobody knew. It was my little secret. So yeah, so I started, and then I got the bug and got a degree in dance and musical theater from University of Utah, and then I moved. I got a teaching job, teaching at a performing arts high school out in Oregon. And then I had always wanted to go to New York City to seek fame and fortune, and so I decided now is my time. It's definitely a young person's gig. It's not something you decide to do when you're 50 or 60. You got to do it in your 20s, so I did that. So anyway, that didn't really quite work out that well, but in the meantime, because of my past experience with working with older homes, I started a painting business and started painting mostly interiors because that's what you have in New York City. You don't have a lot of exterior paint projects. And that quickly evolved into doing window restoration work, and I found I really enjoyed working on older properties. So that's kind of how I got into working with epoxies. So very much from a hands-on painter's perspective. And then I moved on to discovering a product out of England. Actually, it was out of Holland, but I was in England and started importing their product for my projects. And then they asked me to come on board to help them bring their products into the United States. So I did that. And then all of a sudden they decided that they were done. They didn't want to continue their U.S. adventure. But I saw the potential, and during that time, I had gotten them on this old house TV show So there was lots of interest. My phone was ringing off the hook for people who wanted these epoxies.
I mean, like, just hold up for a minute. Like, randomly you got on This Old House. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so there's my full circle acting career right there.
Right.
I was on several episodes of This Old House TV show, and I also did some work for the magazine. And that's kind of how I got into it. Was the magazine was a Times Warner publication, which was a New York City publication, and they were looking for stories, and I was in their backyard, and then they said, hey, you got to go up, talk to Norm and Steve and everybody up in Boston. So I did that, and that led to really pretty much almost 10 years of doing projects on and off for them with This Old House. So
wow.
So that's kind of where I got this, and then I started another business with Dura-Fix in 2013. So I'm kind of back doing what I was doing initially.
Well,
except I'm not dancing anymore.
Well, I hope a little bit, maybe. Let's dive into your presentation and learn more about the product.
Okay, so I started a company called Next Generation Systems. We sell flexible epoxies engineered for wood repair. Pretty common applications for repaint projects. Even if you're in the desert area, there's still lots of wood decay in those areas that need attention. So here's what we'll cover today. A little bit about me. We already talked about that, so we can skip most of that. Our recommended surface prep, and if you're familiar with using conventional epoxies, you'll find that our recommended surface prep is different than a conventional epoxy that you might find. We cover both Dura-Fix warm and cold weather formula, and how to use Dura-Fix to increase your productivity and profit from the wood rot that you find on your repaint projects. And then we'll wrap it up with Q&A. So this was on the Salem project in Massachusetts back when I still had dark hair. And this was a shoot that I did for This Old House magazine. And you can see there I actually can paint, even though they wanted me to hold up the pail so it could get in the shot. But that was from one of the shoots for the magazine. I mentioned I'd started advanced repair technology after I worked with the Dutch, and I sold that company in 2007 and started Dura-Fix. So our recommended surface prep, some of this is really basic stuff, but others not so basic. Remove all the paint from affected area. So you don't really want to be bonding the epoxy to paint, not because it won't adhere to the paint, but how well is that paint adhered to the substrate. So in order to get a good quality bond, we want to get that paint away from the area. You don't necessarily have to remove 100% of it. Get rid of the decayed and damaged wood to sound bright wood. Now, this is where we're a little bit different from the competition. They recommend what they call consolidating. Consolidation was a method that was kind of developed, if you will, back about 60 years ago. And what that implies is that you're brushing an epoxy onto the decayed wood, and it's supposed to consolidate that decay. They claim that it penetrates deeply into the matrix of the rot and provides a good substrate bond for the putty. And I'll show you how we feel that's not a proper approach. So how with this epoxy consolidation, I kind of always wondered, well, how deeply does this consolidant penetrate, especially if you're brushing it onto a vertical surface where it's not sitting and pooling, but it's running down the side of of the piece that you're working on. And what percentage of this penetration is sufficient? Is 5% sufficient? 10%? How good do we need it? And that's something that's never been addressed. And how do you know if the desired penetration has been achieved, since it's all a blind operation? You're just assuming that this low viscosity epoxy is penetrating, but you really have no idea from a applicator point of view how deep is that stuff going in the wood. So I went ahead and decided to do some testing myself, and looked into it, and my conclusion was that this consolidant penetrates probably less than a 32nd of an inch. So it amounts to no more than a coating that gets brushed, like an epoxy paint is all it is. It just gets brushed on the surface, doesn't penetrate, doesn't consolidate. So here's the test. This is what an epoxy consolidant looks like. It's a low viscosity, brushable material, kind of a honey consistency. And I took newsprint and I brushed on newsprint to see how deeply this consolidant would penetrate the cellulose structure of newsprint. And that would give me at least some indication of how deeply this consolidant is penetrating. And I discovered that what you're looking at there is the 5th sheet number 5 of newsprint. And as you know, newsprint's very thin. And so I figured that's probably less than a 32nd of an inch is all that it penetrates. So on to surface prep, back to surface prep. You want to check the moisture content, make sure it's below 18%. You don't want to be putting any repairs, or for that matter, painting onto wood that has a high moisture content. You want to sand, after you remove all the decay, you want to lightly sand and remove all dust, get a good surface to bond to. So on to how do some of these repair materials fail? And this was something that I came to know pretty deeply because I was in kind of the window restoration world in New York City, and I got calls all the time, and they would say, hey, we've got paint failure on this window that was done 4 or 5 years ago. We need for you to come and give me a price to repaint this because the paint is failing. But there's more going on here than just paint failure. So why is the paint failing? So in this case, we stripped down the wood and found that what they had used was a heavily filled epoxy, conventional epoxy being used, and they used the consolidation method. So they didn't bother to remove the decayed wood before they conducted the repair. And this is a close-up shot of that slide. And what we see here is both adhesive failure. That's where the material doesn't stick well to the wood, but we also see cohesive failure. And cohesive failure is where the material itself cracks under the expansion and contraction that you find with wood, the seasonal changes you find with wood. So here's kind of a close-up shot of this material, a very heavily filled material, very lightweight. It's filled with what they call microballoons, and the microballoons make it thicker and actually make the material easier to sand. So that's why they use the microballoons. So back to the solution. So we often refer to what our approach as dentistry for wood. Get rid of the decayed material. Just like a dentist, you're going to get in there and you're going to get rid of all the decay, and you're going to find bright, sound wood that you're going to bond to. You're going to get a much more durable, much more lasting repair by removing the decay and not relying on leaving the decay in place. Again, we talked about checking the moisture content. We've designed Dura-Fix to have a high degree of flexibility. And what you see here is a test that was done, ASTM test on the flexibility called flexural strength. And so we've engineered Dura-Fix to have a high degree of flexural strength. So what does that mean? It means that it's going to have both good quality adhesive strength, but also cohesive strength. So it's going to resist cracking, and it's going to flex a little bit as the wood expands and contracts. And there's a little example of the Dura-Fix bonding to the wood fibers. So we pre-metered the Dura-Fix into a dual cartridge to try to make this as simple as possible. So you're not working out of cans, you're not guessing, you're not pumping it out like you would with a marine epoxy. You basically put it into the special dispensing gun, squirt out what you need. It pre-meters it so it comes out already in the correct ratio. Because with an epoxy, you have a resin and a hardener, and they need to be mixed together to create a chemical bond. It's resealable. We have a no slump, no sag formula, so you can sculpt it right into place and it will resist sanding. We have it, like I said, available in the dual cartridge, but also it's available in our 2-in-1 cartridge that fits into a standard caulk gun. So part A and B are in the same caulking tube, if you will, and that's what it looks like, fits into a standard caulk gun. It's still the same material, still requires mixing. So there's no fillers that are needed for our product. There's no need to adjust it in any way. You just dispense it out, mix it up, and you're ready to go. So this is what we recommend: dispensing it here, mixing it on a flat surface, mix it thoroughly, and then you've got excellent modeling, shaping characteristics right out of the gate. So back to that project I showed you earlier. After we removed all the decay, we apply the Dura-Fix. We have an open time of about 30 minutes. It takes overnight for it to completely harden up. And then after overnight, we sand it and then give it a coat of paint. We also have Dura-Fix available in our cold weather formula. So I showed you the warm weather formula before. Warm weather is designed for applying the material in temperatures between 70 and 95. The cold weather formula is for applying the temperatures, applying the product between temperatures that are 70 degrees, maybe down to about 40 degrees. So you'll still get an overnight cure because epoxies are temperature sensitive materials. So they're going to cure largely based on the air temperature or the temperature of the surface you're applying it to. So how can Dura-Fix benefit your repaint business? You can do complex repairs in minutes, saving time, materials, no waste. There's no need to hire a carpenter. There's no need to go to a mill shop, to a lumber yard. You basically keep some of this material in your van, and when you encounter some wood decay, you can do large or small repairs right away with your existing crews. You don't need somebody that has years of experience in carpentry work. You can do large or small repairs. So whatever repairs you might encounter, you'll be ready to hit the job running. So here's an example of some very large repairs. You can actually splice in wood pieces to help benefit your project and reduce the amount of material you're using. You're going to get quicker start to finish time, consistent curing because of our warm and cold weather formulas, and it only requires basic tools and craftsmanship. So we can assist your business with contractor training. We're offering contractor training now. Mostly we've been doing it in person at a facility in Albany, New York, which is where I'm located. But we're also prepared to begin doing virtual training where we will send you all of the samples that you need, including the materials, and then I can walk you through virtually the steps to do both horizontal and vertical repairs, including splicing repairs, to give your people a good background into the various encounters that you might have with wood decay. And with that, we're going to offer you a 10-year extended warranty, so you can offer that to your customers. And to some people in some places, reducing the carbon footprint is important. And without a doubt, repairing existing is far more effective in reducing the carbon footprint compared to 100% replacement of a porch or a window or siding, whatever you might encounter in your repaint projects. And just to wrap it up, here's a sample of a very intricate repair that was done up in Vermont a couple of years ago. And they took the Dura-Fix, and in one application, they were able to replicate some pretty complicated repairs on the bottom of a column. So it's a pretty versatile material for any type of projects you might encounter.
Wow, that was excellent. And I certainly, a lot of questions popped into my mind. I'm going to switch us over here on view, and I think we're going to start with Fred had some questions about the tubes and also primer. Fred, go ahead and ask, if you want to unmute yourself, ask John your questions.
Hey, John, I didn't realize you were actually in Albany. That's where we started our company.
Oh, is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Our phone number is 518 Painter. So.
Well, oh, okay. I've heard of 518
Yep.
Painter. Yeah, absolutely. Where are you now?
Yeah, we're out in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay.
So big move.
Big change.
No more winter though. Thankfully, I don't need the cold weather filler. So I had a question about, you mentioned the tubes are resealable. How long will a tube last in storage after it's been opened and partially used? And then a kind of a second follow-up to that, is there any type of temperature range that it needs to be stored at?
Yes. Basically, the first part of your question, it'll store for up to a year once it's been opened. We recommend consuming it within a year once you've opened it up. Store it in a cool, dry environment, which is similar to, a can of paint, right? They're going to, if you read the instructions, they're going to say, don't leave it in a hot van overnight, et cetera, et cetera. Store it in a cool place. So that's what we would recommend doing. Is
it susceptible to freezing?
It won't be damaged by freezing, but it will be. It will, if you bring it out when it's super cold, then you may have a little bit of hard time working with it because it's going to be very stiff and like a toffee consistency because it's going to be so cold.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. So before we go to Steve's question, I want to ask you something very important that we want to make sure we get on this recording. I think you shared with me that the easiest way to order your product is actually through Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes. About a year ago, we started, we put our products up on Amazon, and it's been working out very well. And it works well for everyone. And so Amazon, you can also order off our website, and or you can always pick up the phone, give me a call. We can get an order together for you and get it sent out. So we do have a few retail stores up in New England that carry the product, and we're certainly open to talking to paint dealers, paint retailers about bringing Dura-Fix into the stores. But at this point, probably the simplest way to get our products is to hop on Amazon and just type in Dura-Fix epoxy, and it'll pop right up.
Great. That sounds really good. Steve, do you want to pop in here and ask your question about second coat?
Hey, hi, John.
Hey, Steve. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Appreciate you looking at my pictures I send you and giving me the feedback. When I was just going to share this with Fred. After, of course, it's important to clean it really well before you put it back on if you don't use the whole thing. And I think that goes back to the number one rule. Painters don't even clean their can lids off when they seal them. Houses that I go in, I just cannot believe the conditions of the lid, but that's a whole other story, or a pet peeve. So you out here, we have the high temperatures, and one thing I did learn is you cannot apply this in direct sun on a vertical surface, especially if it's like 95 degrees on a fascia. It won't sag right away, but as it heats up, it will sag. So there's learning curves to it here in the desert, but yeah, it's a great product. I've used it day in and day out, and it's one of those where I take a picture and I'll show another homeowner, like, here's your fascia board. You've got a little wood rod in the corners. Is your next painter going to do this? Because this is how I want to repair it for you. Because out here, roofers, they take and replace wood, but they don't offer the painter to paint the wood. They don't prime anything out here. There is no primer put on wood structures out here in Arizona. Tops of beams, it's just raw wood painted. And a lot of fixes just cut it off or put some kind of aluminum, cover it with metal is what they do a lot of times. But so what I've had to done before, what my question was, so I need a little bit more epoxy on there. So I sand it and I put another coat on the next day after it dries, and it seems to be working. Is that?
Yeah,
cool?
nothing wrong with that. No,
Okay.
just sand it, just scuff it up a little bit,
Yeah.
so you get good tooth.
Give it some tooth and then spread
Yeah.
another coat on to bring it up.
Absolutely.
So a lot of times I go over the repair with textured elastomeric to add the wood texture so it looks like wood.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as long as we're on that topic, I think some people might want to know, like, if you can drill through it and how soon, that kind of thing, John?
Yeah. How soon? Yes, you can drill through it. You could take a router to it. You can cut into it. And it's designed to stay open for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then it goes through a curing process after it's been opened. And that curing process usually takes 8 to 10 hours, depending on the thickness. And then it's ready to be sanded and painted. I know Fred was asking about the limitation of how deep a repair can be used. I just noticed that came up in the chat. That's quasi-related. So you can, if you've got a very deep repair, you can do it like Steve said. You could do it in a couple days if you have the time. But you can also build it up in one application. Or if it's an extremely large repair, maybe splice in some wood within the repair. Does that answer your question, Fred?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just curious because a lot of times we get, the 2x10s or whatever around garage door trim that they rot sometimes all the way through. And I'm just curious if, 2 inches is too deep of a repair for it, or if that's, adequate.
Oh, that's normal. Yeah, that would be considered an average repair. I mean, we've done some very large repairs in the past in one application, just building it, mixing it up. One guy's mixing it, another guy's applying it, and they're just building it right up to where they want it to sit. So it becomes a matter of, we recommend that, do a quick inspection. When you get to those areas, take a pocket knife or a screwdriver and just go around and start probing a little bit and just see how deeply that decay is found. You'll get a pretty good gut feeling for how deep that goes. At which point, at least you'll get a gut feeling as to, okay, do I need 1 tube of epoxy or do I need 3 tubes? So then it becomes a matter of weighing time and money. Do you want to spend $150 on Dura-Fix, or do you want to run to the lumber yard and get a $30 piece of wood and spend $50 on Dura-Fix, doing a splice? So it becomes a matter, once you get used to using the product, you get a good feel for when you kind of reach that point at which it's probably best to either replace or do a splice.
I think Ray Sola, asked the question here, whether it's structural, and the same thing came to my mind. If you're dealing with the bottom of a load-bearing, chunk of wood, and it's really deeply rotted, is there a call that you have to make, in terms of?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I was an engineer or a lawyer, I would say, get an engineer in there and calculate the load and, spend $1,000 trying to figure out whether or not the epoxy can handle the load. But primarily what we're talking about, like at the bottom of a post, is we're talking about compression strength, right? So the post is coming down, on top of the Dura-Fix. That would be compression. Dura-Fix has a very high compression strength, higher than the wood itself. So that's not really an issue. The bigger issue comes when it's in tension. So when it's a horizontal member, on a rafter tail or a rafter, and there's weight coming down onto the material, then it becomes a little bit more complicated as to how much tension is being calculated. And I'm not an engineer to kind of know how to consult people in that without actually knowing the loads and doing all that work. Most people, when they ask that question, they're asking a question about compression strength. So they're looking at the bottom of a post or column, and so the answer would be yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And then Peter had asked about, can you use the cold weather formula in warm weather? Was that the question, Peter? Let's see. Dura-Fix for cold weather, can it be used in warm weather? Yes. However, as we had mentioned before, epoxies are temperature curing products. They're creating their own heat as a cross-linking chemistry that's taking place. The cold weather formula will heat up faster in hot weather. Because keep in mind, it's designed to cure overnight in cold weather. So in hot weather, it's going to cure even faster than the warm weather formula. So that's why we've developed both the warm and the cold, so that you don't get accelerated curing on a hot day, which you would get with the cold weather formula. Does that answer your question, Peter?
Yes, but in that case, Stephen asked that on vertical surfaces, it eventually is sagging, kind of. What about using the cold weather that dries quickly on the vertical surfaces, and then we're not sag anymore? How that comes?
I can understand why you would think that, but it's going to set up even quicker. And if it's a thick amount, it might start to smoke under all that excessive heat. So I've seen it happen before with the cold weather on a super hot day and the bright sunlight. It can start to the curing process can just get kicked into high gear, and you'll start to see some whiffs of smoke coming off. It's so hot.
So
it won't catch fire, but it can get very hot.
So what is the temperature in this specific case that I should consider cold weather? 50s, 60s?
Yeah, from 70 degrees down to 40 degrees is what we recommend. 70 to 40.
So above 70, you use the regular, which is, I can say, pink color, whatever.
Yes, you can use either one really around 70 degrees. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
But when you start getting towards the extreme ends of the hot and extreme ends of cold, we recommend you switch to the cold weather.
Under 50 degrees, use the cold.
Yes, yes. And like Steve had experienced, you want to avoid working in direct sunlight, even when it's chilly out. It's a good practice just not to apply any materials, including paint, in direct sunlight if you can avoid it.
Correct. Yeah. Okie dokie.
Okay. Well, we have time for one more question. But I know Fred had asked if we could use it on interior projects, and Dawn had a question as well. Dawn, do you want to address your question?
Yeah. So thank you for joining this today and presenting. So I use Abitron.
Okay. Yep.
Liquid and wood liquid. 2 gallons. So a typical job for me, I'm going to use probably at least 2 gallons, at least, of liquid and of wood.
Okay.
So how much of the Dura-Fix do I need?
Oh, good question. Yeah. Well, with the Dura-Fix, you're not going to need the liquid wood. You're not going to need the consolidant.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're going to save that step. So you're going to save that labor, and you're going to save the purchasing of that material. So you're not going to have to use that. With the dual tubes are going to get you about a softball size repair from a dual tube. So I would say, I'm not quite sure how that equates to gallons. I would say probably 8 tubes would equal a gallon.
Yeah, something that's picturing. Yeah.
I can get back to you on that, but it's a half a liter for the dual tube, roughly. Okay. And 4 liters to a gallon, right? Roughly. So do the math, 2 times 4 would be 8. So it's significantly more expensive. However, my experience has been that this older technology is not as durable as the newer technology.
Well, as we wrap up, John, could you just maybe give us a common interior application situation, and then we'll close out?
Oh, yeah. I think you said Fred had asked that question.
Yeah.
No, interior, oh gosh.
Bathrooms.
Yeah, bathroom. I'm just thinking about some of the stuff that comes to mind.
Staircase.
Door strikes. Where you've got, say, in an older building, you've got multiple locks put into a door.
Oh.
And it's been, the locks have damaged either by tenants or whatever reason they're damaged. That's a great example of an interior repair on a door where there's been holes in doors, that sort of thing. I've seen in older homes where they've taken the electrical outlets and sunk them in the baseboard, which is not code, I guess, and they take those out and put them up where they belong, up higher on the wall, and then filling those down in the baseboards. Old flooring can be repaired effectively with Dura-Fix. One thing I didn't touch on, I'll touch on it very quickly, is it can be tinted. So if you are dealing with natural wood, say on a floor, you can mix in a tinting compound and you can tint the Dura-Fix, and then you'll have more of a natural wood look.
Can you comment on what type of tint or dye would work? Whether acrylic or oil or any time any type of tinting would work. The stuff that I prefer is this material called Mixol.
Oh, the Mixol, German. Okay.
Mixol.
Yes.
And that stuff's really handy. It comes in little drops, and you just put a few drops in and mix it up. Comes in all different types of colors, but also dry pigments would work as well. And primer. You can use whatever type of primer you want, Fred, on over top of the Dura-Fix. We just recommend that you sand it first to scuff it up, and then you can either use an oil or a latex or acrylic primer system.
Okay. John, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, and feel free to reach out. You can find us on the website at www.nxtgensys.com, and you can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn. All you got to do is I'm all over social media, so you'll find us.
Join the Craftsmanship Forum today. Visit PCACraftsmanshipForum.com. Interested in being a featured vendor on the Tools and Products series? Reach out to craftsmanship@pcapainted.org to learn more about sponsorship pricing.